What is the easiest way to cook a whole spaghetti squash without cutting yourself? And how do you use an Instant Pot electric pressure cooker to cook a whole spaghetti squash? Stay tuned to find out. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Clean Eating Kitchen. This is my channel where I share real food recipes to help you feel your best. My name is Carrie, and I have a master's degree in public health with a specialty in nutrition. If you also like clean eating recipes and tips, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you are alerted every time I upload a new video. A spaghetti squash is a great low-carb, gluten-free, and grain-free option to regular pasta. This type of winter squash is very common in grocery stores throughout the fall and winter, and it is a magical type of squash. The problem is that for most spaghetti squash recipes, you're required to cut the raw squash in half to then cook it in the oven. It is very hard to cut a raw spaghetti squash in half, and you risk cutting yourself. Or if you're like me and you have any type of autoimmune disease or joint issues, you often don't have the hand strength to use a knife to cut the squash in half. In this easy pressure cooker method, I'll show you how to cook a whole spaghetti squash in the Instant Pot without any poking or cutting. We are going to cook it whole, and don't worry, I promise it won't explode. Once we cook the spaghetti squash whole, I'll show you how easy it is to then slice it open and serve it just like you would pasta with spaghetti sauce. And stay tuned to the end, and I'll give you a little update on the mini kitchen renovation that I have coming up in the next couple of weeks. So let's jump into the recipe. First, you want to make sure that you have a whole spaghetti squash that is about 6 inches or smaller. I just want to show you, you need to make sure that it will fit inside a 6-quart or 8-quart Instant Pot. You probably can't use a 3-quart Instant Pot because most spaghetti squash will be too large to fit inside the mini Instant Pot. But first what we're going to do is add the trivet into the bottom of the Instant Pot. Now, if you don't have a trivet, you could always use some balled up pieces of aluminum foil, and it's just to help keep the squash off the bottom of the pot. And we're going to add 1 cup of water, which we always need to add liquid to an Instant Pot because that's what allows the pot to come up to pressure. Now we're just going to put the whole squash right on top of the trivet inside the Instant Pot. And again, I have not poked it or sliced it with a knife or anything. It's just, I did wash it and I'm putting it right inside. Now we're going to put on the lid. And of course, you're going to set the pressure valve to sealing. Now, not every Instant Pot has a pressure valve anymore. Some are automatic, but I'm using a 6-quart Instant Pot Duo, and you do have to manually put the sealing valve over to sealing. Now we're going to set the time on high pressure to 18 minutes. And then once the cooking time is up, we're going to let the pressure come down for about 10 minutes before we remove the lid. And then once the cooking time is up, we're going to let the pressure come down for about 10 minutes before we remove the lid. Okay, so the pressure has come down on the Instant Pot after cooking. So we're going to remove the lid, and always do that carefully. And then I'm going to use tongs to transfer the cooked squash to a cutting board so then I can show you how easily it slices open now. And you will be so surprised how the inside, the flesh of the spaghetti squash will shred up just using a fork, and the spaghetti squash is completely cooked, so you can serve it right away or you can save it for later. Let me just get some stuff out of the way. Okay, so I have a few things to make this easier. I have my tongs because the squash is still very hot. I have a sharp chef's knife, which I'm going to use to cut off the ends of the spaghetti squash. And then I have just a regular kitchen fork that I will use to shred the squash. And then I also have a spoon because we're going to need to remove the seeds. So let me just cut off the ends of the squash because we won't be able to eat the ends. So we'll be discarding the what used to be the stem of the squash. And you can see, I mean, it literally just cuts like butter. It's so soft and easy. So let me just get rid of these end pieces. We can't use these. Okay, now let's go ahead and cut into the spaghetti squash. Look at that. It is so soft and so much easier than cutting it raw. And you can actually do this with other types of squashes. On my site on cleaneatingkitchen.com, I have similar recipes for Instant Pot spaghetti squash, acorn squash, butternut squash, and kabocha squash. Those are all very dense winter squashes that you can do in this same method. They do vary a little bit by temperature and method. But you can check my site and I can actually link some of those recipes below to make it easier for you to find them. And I do have another video on how to cook a whole Instant Pot, how to cook a whole butternut squash in the Instant Pot. So I will link that video below as well. So now I'm just using a spoon to get rid of the seeds because these, we don't want them to be in our pasta dish. Now, of course, these seeds are edible, just like pumpkin seeds. So if you wanted to, you could clean them up. You would need to rinse them off and you could roast them. But that is not what we're doing today. What we are doing today is finishing up this squash, and then I'll show you how to serve it with just a plain tomato sauce, and it looks and tastes similar to regular spaghetti. There's some parts of the squash that are a little bit gooey, and we will just get rid of those parts. All right, now I've really prepped the squash very well, and I got rid of all the seeds. So the only part now is to continue to shred the flesh of the squash, and you can see how easily this is what is so magical about spaghetti squash. It literally just comes apart into these noodle like strands, and that's what gives it its name, spaghetti squash. Now you can see one small to medium squash is going to yield about 3 to 4 cups of cooked squash. And as I mentioned, you can serve this just right away. The squash is completely cooked. There's no need to cook it any further on the stovetop or in the oven. That 18 minutes in the pressure cooker is really, I think, the perfect amount of time. And then we did give it about 10 to 12 minutes of natural pressure release. And I've tested this recipe so many times. If you have a larger squash, you could increase the cook time to 20 minutes, maybe even 22 minutes. But again, you're not going to really go really large on the squash. Otherwise, it's not going to fit into the pressure cooker. So I'm just going to finish shredding this up with my fork, and then I'll show you what it's like when it's finished with the spaghetti sauce. It is so delicious. Now, if you have picky eaters at home who don't necessarily like vegetables, and maybe they don't like this firmer texture of the spaghetti squash, you could mix this with regular cooked spaghetti. You could use gluten-free cooked spaghetti, and you could add a little bit of this squash, and I think it would be virtually undetectable. It does have a slightly crunchier texture than cooked pasta, but again, if you just used a little bit, you could maybe fool the pickiest of eaters and get them to get some of the nice fiber and nutrition from this very healthy winter squash. And I have even put some cooked squash in dishes like stews and chilies, and it really just melts right into the dish. And so it's just a nice way to add a little bit more veggies into your diet, which in general is a healthy thing to do. So before we finish, I promised to share you a little bit of details about what I'm calling my mini kitchen renovation that's coming up. And essentially what I'm going to be doing is having these dark wood cabinets painted white. I did hire a professional painter because I've been thinking about this for a few years, and I watched some YouTube videos on how to do it yourself, and it looked like way too much work that I was cut out for, and that's not really my forte, DIY projects. So I did hire a professional painter, and he and his crew are coming in about a week. So I'm going to be spending the next few days taking everything out of my drawers and my cabinets, because all the doors have to come off and the drawers have to come out. And so if you want to follow me on Instagram, which is at Clean Eating Carrie, I have a highlight which is sharing my kitchen renovation if you want to follow everything there on my stories. And I will be doing a before and after video of my little kitchen renovation coming up on my YouTube channel, so you can look forward to seeing that over the next few weeks. So please let me know in the comments if you've ever tried spaghetti squash before and how you like serving it. And also check out my playlist of some of my other healthy Instant Pot recipes. As I mentioned, I have a whole video on how to cook a whole Instant Pot butternut squash in this exact same method. It makes it so easy and safe. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.